Have you heard the one where my insides explode? Okay, bear with me. This is a little graphic, but it's my infertility journey for the most part. All right, my mom had endometriosis. I knew that growing up. My aunt had endometriosis. We were pretty sure I had endometriosis. So my mother took me to the gynecologist, and we said, hey, I think I have endometriosis. And they're like, okay, we'll do a pelvic exam. So they did the basic exam, and they're like, you have no endometriosis. You are fine. And I'm like, oh, great. I only have painful periods and, cysts bursting here and there. But okay, you say I don't have endometriosis. I'll believe you. Well, little did I know at the time that the definition of endometriosis is the lining of the uterus growing outside of the uterus. So there's no way for them to actually find that out through a pelvic exam. So I was happy and I believed them, but I was in a lot of pain every period. Well, as I grew older, I got a boyfriend, and one night we were hanging out at his place. His parents weren't home. One thing led to another. Anyways, after fooling around, my whole abdominal wall seized up. And I just assumed it was a cyst because I had had them so often. But with endometriosis, there are cysts. They're called chocolate cysts. That's disgusting. But they're really filled with toxins. And that is your body's way of encapsulating toxins as a cyst. But this time around, one of the cysts bursts. That was an endometrioma. And I started getting like air pockets in my shoulders and just started getting more and more pain. And we're like, okay, let's just, go to sleep. Hopefully everything's gonna be okay. I'm sweating, but I'm cold, and then I'm shaking, and I just can't think right. And I go to sleep, and then I'm awakened, and I am in such pain that I'm actually paralyzed. I cannot move. So I'm like, trying to get his attention with like the little movement I can do. But like I couldn't like move my abdomen at all. Called 911, got an ambulance, got to the hospital. They had to do emergency surgery. Seems as though I was bleeding internally because the cyst that I had burst was probably as big as an ovary itself. So I had to have emergency surgery. It was a laparoscopy, which goes through the belly button. And they're like, oh yeah, this is pretty bad. We're gonna, send you to a specialist, which was an infertility specialist. So I'm like a teenager going to an infertility specialist. And I remember his name, Dr. Duty. I thought it was funny. He was a tough guy. This is where he was trying to help me. He was trying to do what's best for me, but it was really bad. And so he was really used to working with women who wanted to get pregnant, and that was not me. So he did one surgery, so this is my second. I think by that time, one fallopian tube had to be removed because it was just so squished with endometriosis. I like to think of it, I explain it like cobwebs. So it feels like cobwebs made of razor blades that's just kind of like squeezing everything down below. And at this time, I was still a dancer. I was dancing. I had 2 nutcrackers lined up. And I remember Dr. Duty was like, you cannot dance right now. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This is all I really have. I got out of the hospital, went right back to rehearsals. And of course, this is how I know dancing was, I was probably coming to the end of it. I had lost so much weight because I was in the stinking hospital for I don't know how long, recovering from almost dying. And they're like, oh my God, girl, you look great. What diet is that? I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, the diet is, striving for my life. But yeah, so then on top of that, he's saying, now I cannot do my nutcrackers. He gave me a doctor's note. he was worried that all the cysts that still remained could like join together like Mighty Morphin powers and join together and then be so heavy that it would twist my ovary on itself, and who knows what would come of that. Now I know that there was so much endometriosis that everything was on lockdown. Nothing was going to be moving, but I didn't know that at the time, and I was in a lot of pain. And they kept saying, oh, we might have to do a hysterectomy. And, I'm like 17, 18, that's ridiculous. I was not about to have a hysterectomy. So they put me on birth control pills. On birth control pills for 15 years, I was, just to help. And now I know that's not the right answer. I moved to New Jersey, still struggling. I don't have insurance. I'm an actress. I am trying different doctors. I remember I went to one doctor in Hoboken, New Jersey, and she literally was like taking phone calls like during my exam, like my pelvic exam. Not cool. I tried another doctor, and his English was not so good. So like instead of like cysts, he was calling them like tumors. And so like I'm like, what? I'm like freaking out. I'm like, tumors now? But they were really just cysts. And then I started getting blood in the stool. Things just started progressing. I met Josh, and we started dating, and that's where big circles, little circles. He would always promise to give me. It was in our vows. He promised in our vows to give me big circles, little circles. So he was really compassionate and really understanding, and he's the one that helped me to like carve a path on trying to get healing here. Met another infertility doctor, and this doctor, he tried his best. He, 2 more surgeries. And he's like, look, it's really bad. You're like past stage 4, whatever that means. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I don't know. So like they're bringing in people, take a look at this girl. She's got, everybody had seen my hoo-ha after this. It's just, modesty was out the window. He decided to do a laparotomy, which is like where they cut you. So instead of going through the belly button, instead of doing really, small incisions, now I had a huge incision. Looking at the notes, all he did was open me up, spray me with saline, and sew me back up because it was so bad. That was hard, and that has sat with me a lot. There's a lot of healing I have to do for that incompetence, where it's just that nobody told me, like, oh, it's bad, oh, it's bad, it's bad. It wasn't until like I'm doing acupuncture, I'm doing everything, and I go into this endometriosis like chat room or whatever, and they tell me of a doctor in New York called, his name was Dr. Kanayama. And I decided that this is what I wanted to do. And a lot of people were against it because he didn't take insurance. We had to take out a loan from Josh's parents. And they're like, why don't you just, try like osteopathic manipulation? Tried it. Why don't you try a stress reliever? Tried it. Why don't you try? I tried it all. I didn't get it. It wasn't happening. I was too far gone. Went to Dr. Kanayama. Decided to have surgery with him. And he was one of the like 3 to 4 doctors within the United States at this time that did this particular surgery. So it was cauterizing as he went. So my past surgeries were like scraping. And so when it scrapes, it leaves more scar tissue. And all endometriosis is scar tissue. So it built up and it built up and it built up. And so I went to Dr. Kanayama for quality of life because now I was on at a leave. I did a leave every single day because I was in pain. And I went into his office and he's like, I don't know how you're not addicted to drugs because it was so much pain, and how like you're still having bowel movements. And I swear to this day, a lot of it had to do with my Pilates. And I'm not talking like the fast food Pilates that you can get now. I did like authentic, classical, deep movement of Pilates. And that got oxygen and blood flow to places that probably were just being cut and squeezed to death. So I do the surgery with Dr. Kanayama, and it was supposed to be a 3-hour surgery. It was a 6-hour surgery. Josh was actually out of town, but I was so set on doing this that I had my friend Kate take me. I was like, just somebody help me. And Dr. Kanayama was so cute. Like after he was like Japanese, and he was like, oh, and he was like looking at the pictures, and he was like so impressed, but it was like a little twisted, weird way. Like you probably have heard doctors like, oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. Look at the pictures. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So bad. So bad. And I was dying because like he would show me before and after pictures, and I'm like, ah. But when he did open me up, he went laparoscopic, so he went in the belly button, but everything was bound together. I had endometriosis that was so rampant throughout my abdominal cavity that my ovaries and my uterus, my bowels, my bladder, some muscle tissue was all bound together like an alien. And he had to separate every organ, and he put mesh in between to keep it separated. And so as soon as I got out of that surgery and started to heal, it was like, oh my gosh, it was like before puberty. I lost all this like inflammation, which even when I had all those other surgeries, I was gaining weight due to inflammation. And so like, he's like, you're gonna have to have another surgery in 5 years, but I never did. I lost my other fallopian tube, so I had no fallopian tubes left, but he kept my ovaries, he kept my uterus, and I am grateful. I'm very grateful for that. Let me look, I took so many notes because there's so much that I wanted to go through. Oh, right. So he wanted me to do like the vegan diet and the acupuncture and like green tea. And so I did, and I began that journey. And that's when I started to get a little more aware of the things that can prevent and things that can help in this line. But I haven't had pain since that surgery. Now, I think it did have a trajectory to help me heal, and I was so far gone that I needed that surgery. So I'm not anti-doctor. I'm not anti-surgery. When it's needed, it's needed. And at that moment in time, it was needed for me. So now I have a lot of scar tissue. The mesh has stayed. I went through early menopause, but I'm out of pain. And you already heard my infertility story about having the baby. So the doctors, before Dr. Kanayama, wanted to get me pregnant. And I'm like, I know now, like, oh my gosh, that would have never stuck. I would have died. The baby would have not have survived. It would not have been good. So coming into knowing my body, because I went from my body is, it's just against me. And I had to get over that because that's not it. My body had been blessed to tell me like something is wrong. And I do remember one time going through all of this. It was like after a surgery, maybe 2 weeks after one of these crazy surgeries, I started throwing up, and it was blood. And I don't know if you've ever thrown up blood, but it ain't like the movies. It's not like you have like, oh, a little bit. No, it's coffee grinds. So when you're throwing up blood, it's coffee grinds, and it's almost like solid. And I remember this, I was still living in Texas, and I called my mom, and I'm like, something's horribly wrong. Please come pick me up. And she took me to the hospital, and I couldn't stop. And I couldn't stop throwing up. And it was just coming, and it was coming. And I had the bucket, and then I was in the back seat, and I just remember like it was never ending. And I got a voice, and I know that this was God. And he goes, "Stop it or you're gonna die." And I was like, whoop, but I sat up and I stopped throwing up. Got to the hospital, they put the tube down my throat. There wasn't anything there. They couldn't find anything. And that's how I know there's miraculous healing. I know that it's a part of knowing your body, knowing what to do, but also like listening to what you need to do for yourself and for the body that you are inhabiting as of right now. So I know that it was a horrendous journey, and I don't wish that on my worst enemy. But again, at the end of it, I would have never had Max. I would have never gone through these healing journeys that I had to go through if I didn't go through all that pain. So many things, many things exploded inside of me. But I'm here. I'm here to talk about it. And I'm here to share that there is hope.